Check. Good. So I'm Max Ceron. Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding Podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association Podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and as always, I'm trying to find the best stories I can find across this beautiful nation of ours. Today, I am sitting just a block away from headquarters here in Milton, Ontario from CWB, but I am talking to Nick here, who's calling in from Ontario. I think you're in Ontario as well here. Yeah, you are.
Yes, I am.
And welcome to the show, Nick. Nick Cotto, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I've been on the road for about a week now, so I'm looking forward to getting home, but that's the way life is, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
So where are you calling us from right now, Nick?
So I'm calling you from Athens, Ontario. We're a little small farm town community, about 1,500 people, about 3,000 in the whole township, but in the village itself, about 1,500 people. We're like a single main street, one flashing light, agricultural community, lots of farming going on out here. And yeah, it's been my home now for 25 years or better.
25 years? Wow. So Athens, you said, like as in Athens, Greece?
Exactly, yes. Athens, Greece.
Now, how far are you away from like the GTA?
So from Toronto proper, I'm probably about 3 hours. We're about an hour south of Ottawa, so kind of right near the St. Lawrence Seaway.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And like I was reading up on your bio there that you were initially born in the United States.
Yes, I was. So my dad was actually in the U.S. Army, and he was stationed at Fort Drum in Watertown. And then obviously being 19, they used to cross the border here to drink. So that's where he met my mom. And then he got replaced into Fort Stewart, Georgia. And then that's where I came along.
Mhm.
So we lived there till about 98, and then we came home.
And what convinced your family to move up to Canada instead of your mom relocating to the U.S.?
Well, my mom always had a close connection with her family, and my dad's family wasn't as close and connected, so it just made more sense for them to come up here for the support system. So
Yeah. And is your mom's family from Athens?
yes, yeah, my grandma lives right across town. My grandfather's unfortunately passed now, but yeah, he was across town, and yeah, and a great aunt and uncle here in town too. So we're a small, tight family, but we've always been here. So
Well, that's nice. You know, the small town communities. I'm in Saskatchewan. There's a lot of small town, rural kind of,
yep,
attitude.
yeah,
There's pluses and minuses to it, obviously. Sometimes,
yep,
you love your community, but there's not a lot of opportunities, right? Sometimes you
that's
have to
right.
kind of get spaced out. So let's
Hmm.
let's see if let's talk about a little bit about, that family connection. So you come back up to Canada, you're just a little kid. You're probably like
Yeah,
2 years old,
3 years
and
old. Yep.
you're 3 years old, and you get into
Mhm.
Athens.
Mhm.
What are the things that you liked doing growing up? Like, what were the things in Athens that were your favorite?
Well, I was huge into sports. We always had a good support system here for sports, whether it was just, recreational or competitive. Always played hockey, soccer, baseball. It was just the close camaraderie of the town was definitely something that appealed, I think, to my family. That's kind of why they stuck around here. And then, yeah, school's right down the road. Yeah, I always say like there's not much in Athens, but if you're from Athens, it's got everything you need. So that's kind of, I think, why they stuck around here. And yeah, I grew up playing sports, hockey, like I said. We had a local team here in town that did some traveling. And then same with soccer. We had a soccer team here in town. And then eventually I ended up playing some rep soccer. So I did some traveling for that too. And yeah, it's always given me what I needed for sure.
Now, what about the industry out there? What's the big industry? You mentioned agriculture. Like, what are the big draws for work around you?
So along the St. Lawrence Seaway, there's quite a few chemical plants. So in Vista, which used to be DuPont, Avonic, Ingredion, and Cardinal, there's quite a few plants like that. So a lot of the older generation, I find, they all did plant work. So we have multiple 3M plants just in Brockville, which is 20 minutes down the road. Quite a bit of industry. I wouldn't say there's a lot of commercial stuff. Like there's enough commercial stuff, but it's quite a bit of industry around here. Now, while it's taken a dive a little bit, there was a booming period for a while where pretty well everybody's grandparent you knew worked in a plant somewhere.
And was that the same with your family, like your mom and dad?
Exactly. Yeah. My grandfather spent 42 plus years at DuPont in Maitland. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
And what
So
did your
my mom's a nurse, and then my dad, he was doing construction for a bit, and now he's doing more custodial work.
okay? So
Yep.
as a kid growing up, it sounds like you had a lot of great things around you, lots of
hmm
great, opportunities, but
hmm
what drew you towards the trades? Because not everyone falls into the trades like, first try,
No, no, that's right.
right? So
So,
what
yeah.
happened?
So my grandfather was always kind of hands-on. He had a little shop behind his house, always did some woodworking, and I'd spend, some time out there with him. But truthfully, I was never big into the trades, especially as a kid growing up. I was never a super hands-on working kind of kid. I always imagined myself becoming a cop, and that's actually what I went to school for to start. I did half a year of police foundations, and while I always say I was not responsible, I always struggled with the learning aspect, especially in school. So when I found myself getting that freedom to go down, because I went to Stony Creek campus for welding, but originally I went to the Hamilton campus, Mohawk College, for police
Police study.
foundations.
Yeah.
And I found myself, struggling in class. I wasn't able to do the homework well. And it was kind of a fluke accident with it. I went and spoke to the student advisor. It was right around Christmas time, and I was super upset. I didn't feel like I was doing well in it. And she said, "Well, we don't have many options for you to transfer, but we do have a fabrications technique program that has carpentry, plumbing, and welding. And you could pick one of those three majors in it." So honestly, I had done a little bit of woodworking with my grandfather, and I hadn't done much plumbing. I didn't really want to touch, toilets and stuff all that much. So I thought, you know what, let's try welding. And it just kind of caught me off guard of what it was, and I ended up running with it. So it wasn't actually my original plan to become a tradesman, that's for sure.
So what was it about the police studies that you didn't like? What was it that didn't jive with you? Because like, I mean, did were you good in school in high school? Did you like school?
You know what? I wasn't that good in high school. I didn't have that attention span. I always wanted to be that funny kid in class. And I found myself, you know what? Let's go out and we'll run the streets with lights and sirens, and we'll catch bad guys, and that'll be fun, right? And then I found myself, when I got into the program, actually, I had a provincial offenses officer teaching a victimology class. And they made it very clear early on that, a young white man, you're gonna have a tough time getting a job in the trade. So I was like, oh, that's kind of daunting. And then on top of all the paperwork that I was being, kind of brought to my attention that I'd be doing, I was like, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. So that's what kind of, steered me away from that idea. That and the fact that, I was kind of struggling in school.
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting that you bring that up because the concept of what people think is going to be easy often is not, right?
mm,
So even people that get into welding that think like, well, I'll go into welding because I hate school, are often shocked at how much schooling there is in welding, right? When they're like,
absolutely.
they see the textbooks on day one and they're like, wait a second, I thought this was a welding class. Why is there all
Yeah,
these textbooks?
that's right.
How did that foundations class turn out? Like, you got to try out a few things.
Yeah.
Did you feel like that was a step in the right direction?
I did, and like you said, when I got to class, I was kind of shocked by the amount of like book work there actually is involved in it and how much you need to apply yourself to become, a decent tradesman. But I really fell in love with the hands-on portion. This course that I had taken actually allowed you to have 4+ hours in class in a hands-on environment doing welding. We were just doing stick welding, but
Hmm.
just in a booth, but still it was great. And I found myself falling in love with it at that point, even though I was struggling still, struggling with the concept of learning to work with my hands. I still had, I had good dexterity and hand-eye coordination from all the sports I'd played growing up. But I found myself, struggling for sure with, laying nice welds and learning that portion of it. I showed up the first day of class and thought it was just, fire that came out the end of a torch, like you were always brazing. I had no idea it was electrical circuits involved. So
Yeah.
it was very, very eye-opening to me.
Now that early experience, you're getting into it. Were you kind of looking at it in a positive light? Were you thinking like, okay, I'm trying, this is my second go at college now. My first go was kind of bunk. I didn't dig it.
Mhm.
Is it make it or break it now? Or were you like, I'm just going to try this and see if I find something better?
You know what? It was kind of a combination of the two. I was very pushed, and luckily so, by my parents and my grandmother at the time to, pursue school and take something. So at that point, when I, kind of dropped out of police foundations and got into the trades, I was like, darn, like I need to do this, not just for me, but for them too, right? Who are kind of, looking down on me and saying, hey, like, let's get an education here. So for me personally, I pushed myself further, maybe beyond than I would have if I was just doing something else. Um, and I actually found myself, from day one, like I said, I was falling in love with it, but it was a big learning curve for sure. Because like I said, I wouldn't say I'm not responsible because I had a job while I was in school. I was working at Eastside Mario's,
Mm.
and I would always show up every single day on time, ready to work, and I'd work hard. But I also found myself during the lectures and stuff, I wasn't able to focus. I wasn't maybe mature enough, I guess, to say to be away from school or be away at school and trying to learn. So it
Yeah.
is kind of a weird balance between the two.
Youth is an interesting thing. I've read studies about how well people do in school when they're older, and we may be focusing school at the wrong time in our lives. You
That's
know
right.
that perhaps we should not expect people to make career choices at 16. That might be kind
Abs-
of a stupid thing because
mhm,
at 16, perhaps you should just be playing and, developing social skills and learning to organize, learning to clean, learning to cook,
mhm.
like these basic life skills. Because I run into a lot of 20-year-olds that are in college that look lost. They look lost and they don't know how to do their taxes, they don't know how to cook, they don't know how to do laundry, and they're failing school. That's really depressing. Like that
It
doesn't
is.
it doesn't feel good, right?
No, it doesn't. And I agree with that too. Like, I definitely think it's too early on because as you get later on in life, you get those more pressures on you. And it's harder to go back and, go to school and make those career changes. It almost seems more daunting at that point
Mhm.
than when you're young. So I wish that narrative would kind of change and when you have to choose, what you want to do for the rest of your life.
Well, and it's always a race. I'm always telling young people, like, guys, like, just relax. You got time. Like
Yeah.
I've rebuilt my career from the ashes like 3 times now, and every time I thought it was the end of the world, and every time it turned out okay. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
I'm doing all right. So
That's right. Yeah.
it's like you're not in that much of a hurry, but I think what happens is you start to compare yourself, and they always say like comparison is the death of originality, right? Like you don't want to compare yourself to a buddy who's got the $500,000 house at 23 years old and has a
Yep.
doctorate already, because you don't know he might be in debt up to his ears. You don't know how what's going on in behind the curtains. And you know what, even if it is all good for him. That doesn't mean you should be there. You know what I mean?
Nope.
It's everyone's got their own path that they got to figure out, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Now, for once you got into welding, you started falling in love with that little blue light or green light if you had a Lincoln helmet, and you're looking at this light every day, and you're starting to fall in love with it. You're starting to get the schooling, because that's one of the things I love about the trades is that the schooling that you learn, you get to see it in action, right? It's not like university where the schooling is about all this hypothetical that you may or may not ever use. But when the trade school, that thing they taught about you on the chalkboard and in the textbook, literally the next day you're doing it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How did you like that form of education, especially comparing it to your police studies?
You know what? I actually really enjoyed it. Like I said, the hands-on stuff I fell in love with. I fell in love with walking around the shop and, talking with the guys and seeing what they were doing. And I was pretty fortunate at that time. I'm not sure how it works now, but Mohawk College had a program in place where anytime you needed a rod, anytime you needed a chip and hammer, anything, they gave it to you. There was no like, here's your rod, bring me back the burnt one. Like they had a very open policy. As much rod as you wanted to burn, you could burn it. So I really started to fall in love with it at that point. And I was also fortunate enough too when I think it was like second month into the schooling, Walters Group. I'm not sure if you know them. They're a large
Yeah.
structural steel firm. They came in and did a co-op hiring out of our class, and we had about 30 kids, and 5 of us actually got the job to go there and learn under a journeyman fitter. And I was
Right.
fortunately one of them. So that's kind of when it really sparked like, hey, maybe, I've got something. Maybe I've got interview skills, but they also seen what I could do in the shop. So that was kind of maybe a spark in my brain, like, hey, maybe this is something we can really make happen someday.
Well, getting chosen always feels good, right?
It does.
You never want to be last on the soccer team, but
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
but as a fabricator, that's a whole other journey. So
Mhm.
you're going through this program of welding. You pick
Mhm.
up a co-op in a fab shop.
Mhm.
Did you kind of understand the difference between fabrication and welding as a career at that point, or was it all just this is all just the world of welding?
It was all just the world of metalworking and welding. It
Yeah,
was, and that was kind of the time in Ontario. It might have happened a little bit before, but to me, I was kind of seeing the split between the two. So the guy kept telling us, I'm a journeyman fitter. I'm not a welder. He only does little short tacks. And in my brain, so young at the time and trying to absorb as much as I could, it all just kind of blended together. But
yeah.
my time there was, amazing. I got to learn how to do some, coping on beams. I got to learn how to run air arc carbon gouging,
Right.
do some torch cutting, that kind of stuff. It was a very large shop. So again, it was very daunting walking in there and being like, holy cow, like this is the real deal.
Well,
So it really,
shops like Walters, they're great places to learn because they bring in raw material, right? They build their own beams. They cut their own flanges. They form their own stuff, and
Mhm.
that's a really great place to learn, even just to see all the equipment being used, right?
Yeah, it is. And they had a little section for all the co-op kids. They called it the co-op dungeon. It was actually up on a mezzanine. Oddly enough, it's called a dungeon. And it kind of looked over top of the floor. So I often found myself on our little short lunch breaks. I would just lean over the rail and just look at what the guys were doing on the floor. I found it very interesting.
Hmm.
They had some IB at that time they were actually working on the Rogers Center where the Edmonton Oilers play.
No,
And they had some I-beams in there, I remember stacked on their side where an 8-foot ladder looked small compared to them. And I was like, you know what? That's pretty cool. So
well, it's good. I'll think about you next time I'm at an Edmonton game because I
yeah,
love the Rogers Center. It's a beautiful stadium.
yeah.
Yeah,
I've never been, but I've heard it's very nice. Yeah,
yeah, I know it's cool. Hopefully the Oilers can win tonight, but that's a whole other
absolutely.
story.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, you're going through the co-op. Are you all in? Are you like, this is my career, I found it? Or are you still like, let's see where that goes. I still don't have a full-time job because there's a lot of hurdles to still jump through. Like, there's still tickets and certifications and apprenticeships and all this other stuff. Like
Mhm.
how did you feel about where you were?
I felt pretty comfortable. I knew this was what I was going to do, but again, leaving that shop, I didn't know what my career was going to look like.
Yeah,
And I was fortunate enough to be hired on, you could say at the very end of the co-op, but I felt a lot of homesickness. Again, coming from that small town with the close community, I didn't feel home in Hamilton whatsoever.
yeah,
So I ended up opting to not take the job, which, I've often had regrets about growing up in my career, but now I've turned out okay.
yeah.
But I came back home and I did some searching around here, and it took a long time to find the job. I must have spent a week driving all up and down the St. Lawrence, looking for work. And I randomly applied at this small little metal shop called Dowling Metal. And before I even made it home, actually, the lady Leon had called me and she said, "Hey, like, if you want a job, we got a job for you." And I took it. So right away.
That I love hearing those stories because every now and then I get some, up, I guess, disheartened young welder, that is struggling to find work. And I struggle with that because I've never struggled finding work, and the vast majority of welders I know haven't, but I get that some people do. Just whether it's bad interview skills or just shyness or it could be a number of reasons. But the idea of being able to get in your car with your toolbox in the back and your boots in the passenger seat and just drive up and down shops and apply, I still think is one of the best ways to do it. And and
Absolutely.
and I understand there's Indeed and LinkedIn and all these great things, and that's neat. But I think that's more for us old people that are getting into like the desk jobs and the management jobs. I feel like at the end of the day, the welders themselves, they're you just gotta roll up, just roll up and repeatedly. Like if there's a shop that that you want to work at, like it's in your sight,
Yep.
be annoying. Like
Yep. That's right. So I found myself, like I said, I was traveling everywhere. I was going to all these different shops. And it wasn't until about halfway through that process I realized, hey, like I'm not even wearing work boots and safety glasses. And I'm walking into these shops. So I'm like, I need to get some PPE on for them to take me seriously. So I went to a bunch of local shops here around me, and actually one of them I ended up working at later on in my career. But this was 2015, so I wasn't really big. I don't know if Indeed was around then, but I think it was very boots on the ground looking for work. My mom,
Workopolis, maybe.
yeah, exactly. My mom was very adamant about, get out there with your resume and go apply.
Yeah.
And, sure as shoot, it worked.
So how was that first job? Out of school.
It was, again, it was different. It was a much smaller shop than what I was used to from Walters. I was an apprentice on the floor, and I had some very good journeymen to work under. Found myself, on the bandsaw, cutting pickets for rails and doing small little fabrication stuff. I'll always remember my first day I showed up. I was working with a journeyman named Richard, and the first thing he says to me, some days I'll be in a bad mood. It just is what it is. And the first thing I thought was, oh boy, what did I get myself into? And then I was up on a ladder grinding a bunch of his welds and in I-beams that he was putting in for landings and stuff in this building. And I was like, oh man, like I don't know if this is for me, maybe. But I stuck with it, and I definitely fell more in love there with the shop side of things than the site side of things. I was a pretty good shop guy, so yeah, I kept running with it.
I was just talking to a girl. She's in Saskatchewan right now, welding, and she's from Ontario. And how much she loves site work, and we had the same conversation. I'm not a big site guy. I did it for a while. I learned lots. I wouldn't mind maintenance gigs at like mines and stuff. That's not really site work the same. But I'm a shop guy too. Like I fell in love with shop, and it's probably why I got my fitter ticket after, because fitters live in shops, right?
Yeah, that's right. So like I said, I definitely fell in love with the fitting side of things.
Yeah.
But I didn't find my skills take off there because I didn't touch the welder much. I was doing a lot of, the grunt work, I guess you could say. And that's what you do when you're an apprentice, right?
Yep.
So I found myself, doing a lot of that side of the work. I'm doing some painting, which I was not a good painter, still not a good painter.
I'm still not a good painter. No.
Yeah. That's one of those unnecessary evils with in the welding trade for sure.
Yeah.
So I was better primer than painter, but yeah. And just the guys I worked with, I guess, made it a fun job. I still keep in contact with some of them. Same with my old journeyman, keep in contact with them. So
And they apprenticed you? They logged your hours and apprenticed you?
They did, yes. Although I never actually continued with the apprenticeship program because the next job I went to after, they were big on not sending you. They were more focused on the fab work you did there. So unfortunately, after my level one, I got my level one in school and then did my level one hours.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it all kind of ended in terms of my apprenticeship program.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And so where did you go from there? How long were you at that shop for, and then where'd you go?
So I was there for about 2 years, and actually a funny story, the company foreclosed. The business owner's model kind of didn't blend with it was in Kingston, so it's still a smaller community.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of had the idea, hey, like we'll bid cheap and then we'll nail them all in the extras, and that's how we'll make our money. And that kind of bit them in the butt a little bit. So company foreclosed, and I found myself back in, square one. I got to go around and find a job with a resume. And luckily, just down the road, between us and Brockville, about 10 minutes away, a company called James Ross was hiring. So I went in and I got an interview. And luckily, I had no idea at the time, the production manager was my old babysitter's husband. So I think that got me some brownie points. And
small town life, eh?
That's right. So I ended up getting a job there at James Ross Limited. And we were doing paper mill and pulp mill machinery. It was pretty well all stainless, always in a shop fabricating. We're doing, heavy flux core, 045 flux core. We're doing some TIG welding. And that's kind of where I found my trajectory in my career and my welding skills really take off, was working for them.
Well, as soon as you get into a shop that does any stainless work or exotic metals, the caliber of welding is going to be higher. The caliber of the machines is going to be better. Like
absolutely,
just things like that, you start to notice, I guess, more of the finesse stuff, right?
Absolutely.
And not everyone's down for that, but if you are,
No.
you can go a long way with it.
Yeah. And I definitely struggled at first there because, they had a large machine shop on site too. So a lot of the stuff I would make, long products, all stainless. Obviously, everybody knows stainless warps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to hit a machine after. So I had to go ahead and preheat all my stuff back straight. And still, young kid, learning how to run torches, learning how to, ensure straightness on things. It was a struggle for a bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like I said, what really pushed me further. I also got the opportunity to run some, laser tables, and I did some press braking for a little bit with the press brake guy.
Nice.
So I got to kind of learn some of the other sides of the trade that maybe not all welders get to work with. So
Hmm.
it was kind of interesting.
I actually got a request to do for a YouTube video, a heat straightening video, because a
Yeah.
lot of people struggle with heat straightening, and I
Yeah.
did some Googling around, and man, there's a lot of bad information on heat straightening online. Like
There is.
I watch these videos, I'm like, that's terrible. Don't ever do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. We had well, he just retired recently, I heard, but we had a foreman there. His name was Joe. He was a big Polish man. And I said he was the straightening genius. Like when he said he'd come over and he would point exactly where to put my heat marks on this thing, and I would do it. And sure as shoot, it would come right back straight. And we'd have string lines down everything with little keys, checking the tolerances, and it had to be within, I remember like some things 30 feet long had to be within a 16 because they had to machine the tops of these
Yep.
paper mill boxes for ceramics to go on. So everything had to be very, very neat. And yeah, he was an incredible man. He taught me so much. He was one of those guys that he'd tell you once, and if he had to tell you twice, you better just go look it up or ask someone else because he was going to be upset. But I ended up, kind of breaking that accent barrier and learning from him. And yeah, I always cherish the moments that he was spending with me and definitely helping me.
That's funny. I remember my heat straightening mentor, Larry. Same thing. We were doing these giant potash buckets, and they get a pile of weld, but the blade edge is a AR 400, and it would just warp the. There's no way to get around it. You can brace it all you want, but it's got an inch and a half weld fillets all around. It's gonna warp the. And we'd put it up on blocks, and he'd be the same thing. He'd run the string. He'd be like, here, 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 here. And yep, do it. You walk away, let it cool, come back in the morning, bang. It's like, how do you see that?
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a science, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how long were you there at that shop for?
I was at James Ross for 4 years, literally like on the day. Like I started there on the 13th of September, and I think it was 2017, and I left 13th of September in 2021. So it was, and I always cherish the time I spent there. Like I got to learn quite a bit. I had a quality control guy there. I never really understood what he did other than come over and pick me apart. And so we'll get into that later about my transition into that role. But yeah, he definitely taught me a lot too, for sure. It was a good
So
place to work.
why did you leave? What happened?
So I got actually tired of staring at the same four walls every day, as simple as it was. I had a buddy, really close buddy, who worked there at the same time, and he had just got a special constable job in Brockville at that time. So he was leaving, and I was like, oh man, like I'm going to be stuck here staring at these four walls by myself for
Hmm.
the rest of my career. And the place I went to after, called Fedorky's Performance Limited, I actually knew the owner from a gym here in Athens because he's an Athens guy, and he had tried to recruit me, a while back. And at that time, I wasn't ready to leave James Ross. But when the time came, I texted him and said, "Hey, like, do you still have a job opening?" And he said, "Come on over for an interview." So I popped over, and ironically, this is directly next door to James Ross. So I I went. I remember it was kind of a funny story. I had an interview after work, so I left and I went and parked down the road a little bit and waited a few minutes, and then drove the back way in and snuck into the building because I didn't want my current boss at that time to see me going for the interview. But I went in, and Terry and I hit it off, and yeah, that's where I started my journey with Fedorkis.
And what did they do there? What was their gimmick?
So they were an industrial mechanical contractors. So like I said, we have a lot of industrial places, especially chemical plants along the St. Lawrence Seaway here, and they were in every single plant, I think, in this area. And so I spent a lot of time, going into different sites, doing site work.
Hmm.
But again, I had a lot of fabrication skills from where I came from. So
Yeah,
I kind of slipped myself into a mostly shop role,
yeah.
which was really nice. Because again, I definitely enjoyed the shop side of things more than the site side of things. I was good in the shop. So
But you still got to
yeah,
go out and
yeah,
travel and look around a bit at least.
that's right. Yeah, like I said, I got to fit my own pipe. I got to weld my own pipe. And then I went to site and got to install my own pipe. So that in itself is very, very beneficial to my experience for sure.
Now, at this point in your career, you're like 6, 7 years into your welding career. You
Yeah.
had abandoned apprenticeship, so you
Mhm.
definitely have the hours for a journey person, but you didn't pursue it.
That's
But
right.
you must have been picking up credentials along the way. There's no way to do this stuff without it. You know, were,
Yes.
were you picking up pipe tickets? Were you doing pressure like B31s? Were you doing CWB
Yeah.
structural? You know,
Yep. So I had quite a slew of CWB tickets at the time when I came to Fedorkis. And then I acquired more there. I got my all position TIG, stainless, carbon steel. I did flux core stainless there. I kind of brought that into their shop when because they hadn't really touched it all that much on product. And obviously I had a lot of experience from James Ross. So I kind of brought that in and got them going on that. And then they did a lot of piping stuff, asked me B31 1, B31 3. So I got my 6G TSSA ticket for 2 inch and up, and then I ended up having a 1 inch and up ticket for both stainless and carbon steel. And yeah, so I ended up acquiring quite a few tickets when I was there. I kind of became that the welding guy. Everybody seemed to come to me for stuff, and being so young at the time, it was both cool and, like I said before, daunting because I'm still young. My old journeymans, they were all in their 40s and 50s, and it's like, ooh. But I think that was kind of the product of being a welder in an industrial mechanical shop. So
you probably heard it in other podcasts, but I started off in a maintenance machine shop as a welder, right? So that experience that you get in those type of shops is huge because you kind of pick up everything. You become the welder that has to kind of learn how to fix everything and weld everything.
yeah. Yep. So we were doing, we do motor removals and put them back in. And I didn't do too many like shaft stuff with guys because, again, we had some licensed millwrights on site. But I would go and assist them a lot. And I would do plumbing and I did lots of brazing. And it really opened up my skills. And I would say, James Ross definitely started the trajectory of my welding career and you're becoming skilled at it. But Fedorkis definitely topped it off. It's definitely what brought me to the next level and made me really fall in love with the trade itself. Whole metal trade, not just welding.
Yeah, and were you worried at any point in your career at this point that, all these certificates, all these great, tickets that you're picking up, all the work that you were doing because you're non-union and you're non-apprenticed, were you worried about your career kind of long term?
You know what? I thought about it a few times, but the more I got into it, and the more I was, talking around, no, it actually didn't deter me from anything. In fact, I knew I'd be that guy no matter where I went. I
Yeah.
would outwork anybody if I could. I would definitely try my hardest. I had lots of skill. So I knew that would carry me where I needed to go. And I've often thought about, it's time to go back and challenge the Red Seal. But now that I'm kind of into a whole different role entirely, I don't know if I would, but it's definitely still across my mind. And I always recommend to my apprentices, do it, take the apprenticeship, get the Red Seal. Like, don't take the route I did for sure.
Yeah, and I went back and challenged my Red Seal too. Like I did it way later, same idea. Um, but I didn't think about it until it was like I wanted to get into management. Like I realized like I needed to start having some documents that are just not specific to welding procedures. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get you. And
Now,
I kind of felt the same way. That's why while I was at Fedorkis, I actually went and did my welding supervisor.
yep.
And then I became the welding supervisor for the shop. And then I ended up taking my welding inspector. And then, yeah, so that's kind of, again, where I fell more in love with the education side of things because I learned, hey, if I learn at my own pace and I'm studying something I really enjoy, which at the time I did enjoy welding, I could do anything with education.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break now, and when we get back, let's talk about what's going on with your current roles and what you're doing in the world of welding. And also
Yep,
a little bit more about like the programs with the inspector course and the supervisor courses, because a lot of people always have questions about those courses, and we could probably go over that for them. So we'll be right
absolutely.
back here on the CWB Association podcast with Nick Cotto. Don't go anywhere.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and I'm here with Nick Cotto, coming to us from Athens, Ontario. All right. So before the break, we kind of got up to, welder, fitter, kind of jack of all trades, pressure welder, everything. And then you start getting into like the supervisor inspector courses. So
That's right.
that's usually kind of a big change in the type of work you're doing, right?
Mm.
So usually a lot of people start with the supervisor course. What brought you into that supervisor program? Why? And what did you think of it?
So the reason why I got into that was because at the time, the person who was the welding shop supervisor, see, Fedorkis had two different shops. They had a structural shop, and then they had their main fabrication shop. And the person who was running the structural shop actually had just left or was on her way of leaving. So Terry approached me and said, "Hey, like, would you be interested in, becoming the welding shop supervisor over there?" And I didn't really know there was a course at the time. He alluded to it a little bit, but I wasn't really sure what it was. So we kind of sat down and went over it. And yeah, so he ended up promoting me and said, "Hey, this is part of the thing. You're going to get your steel supervisor and you're going to kind of move into more of the structural side of things," which in itself was completely different than I had done. I hadn't done a ton of structural steel except for the little bit I did at my very first job.
Yeah.
So it was definitely different. I'd be on a MIG welder more than the TIG welder or even doing flux core. So
Yep.
and yeah, so I went down. I took one of the courses that Sean Peronich was running. It was out of Oshawa at the Oshawa College, and it was a week-long course. And it was just, stick your nose in a code book and read code after code after code. And I really fell in love with the rules behind welding at that point because the basic stuff of like what weld defects are and what weld discontinuities are, and really at that point it kind of opened my eyes that, hey, like, there's a set standard here that we have to follow by, and there's a reason why we have to do that. So
It's so interesting. Well, number one, Sean's an awesome dude. He's still with the company, so it's
yeah.
good to have him around.
Yeah.
But if I reset this interview to the first 5 minutes and you're telling me about how you didn't like school, you didn't like high school, you didn't like textbooks, you didn't like policing studies because it was too much textbook, and here you are, 8 years later, and you're loving the books. What
I'm
happened?
loving it. And like I said, it's just when I found something that I actually enjoyed and something that I respected, I think it was a no-brainer. It was easy for me to learn. I would sit there for hours on end and read the textbooks. I still read textbooks. It drives my fiance nuts. I'll sit here and just read. And again, it's something that I wish I had while I was in high school, because I'm sure I would be in a completely different position. Not that I would want to be, because I love where I am now, but it's definitely something that I really come to love and enjoy and respect. I respect education, and the time you put into something is what you're probably going to get out of it.
Well, I know that I haven't looked at the supervisor course in a long time now. Um, but some of the basic concepts within the modules within it, like basic metallurgy. So a lot of people don't really get into metallurgy until they have to take the inspector or the supervisor course. And I think a lot of welders kind of dismiss metallurgy as like, why do I need to know that? But then
Mhm.
as soon as you start going down that rabbit hole, you're like, how did I ever exist without knowing this?
It's unbelievable. And even in welding supervisor course, we didn't touch a lot on metallurgy. It was just kind of, the little codes that are detailed about it. We did a little bit of the course book stuff, but I at that point had still already began my, studies on my own about getting into metallurgy, and I was doing a lot of stainless. So I was trying to learn about austenitic stainless steels and
Mhm.
how things work. And then it was, the inspector course where we really deep dove into it. And I
Then
was
you
like,
get
holy
into it.
cow, like,
Yeah.
this is interesting. So
And what did
I
you
don't know
think of
how I
the
survived.
inspectors?
Um, I thought they were really good. And
Yeah.
if you've if you got to be willing to sit in a spot for a one whole week and read code after code after code if you're going to do the supervisor course, but I definitely recommend it. Even as anybody in the welding trade, I recommend going and taking that course, even if you're not becoming a welding supervisor, learning why you're doing what you do and how to do it correctly. Because everybody, once they get into the trade, they know how to lay a little bead, they know how to do, certain things, but learning why you do that and what are the rules around it really opened my eyes to a whole different side of the welding game I didn't know before.
Yeah, and that's something that I preach and I think it's very valuable, but learning more, like the back end of your trade, is like owning a car and knowing more than just putting in the gas,
That's right.
right? Like you can get by just pulling a MIG trigger, and that's fine. Honestly, if that's your career and you're happy with that, kudos to you. But picking up a module or a code book, and even if it doesn't make sense off the top, of working your way through it, or getting gutsy and taking a class
Mhm.
is huge. I remember when I took my level 1 inspector course, I never had a desire to be an inspector. I still don't
Mhm.
ever have a desire to be an inspector. And a lot of people think that because I've been in the trade so long that everyone becomes an inspector. It's like, no, that's
Mhm.
not true. Um,
Yeah.
but I loved taking my level 1 inspection course. I learned so
Mhm.
much. It was great.
Mhm.
No.
Yeah. And that was the same for me. So I recently took it. It was in January, and it was Derek Scobie who taught the course, and that was at Milton headquarters where you are. And yeah, again, it was such a great course. I learned about things that I didn't even know existed. Like I came from shops where we did pressure piping, but we never touched really ASME Section 8 all that much. So I learned on this course how to do ITPs and actually
Thanks.
use the welding gauges and stuff. And to me, it was a really eye-opening course. And I actually took the course with the floor supervisor at the time, who still is, for James Ross. So we kind of coordinated this course together. So I know someone down there.
Mhm.
And yeah, we went down and we did this course, and I fell in love with it. I wish I could have done more at my previous employer for that kind of role, because once I took that course, I wanted to be a welding inspector. I did.
So now you know what's on track. You finished that course in January. Are you still working for the same company? Has your role broadened or changed?
No, so I actually work for a different company now. I left them and I actually took on a full quality control inspector role as a welding inspector.
Okay.
And I'm also the CWB welding supervisor for a company called the Framboys Group. So
Okay.
they're a big union company out of Long Sault. We do all ASME Section 8 tanks. We do API 650 tanks. We do Tubular Exchange Manufacturer Association tanks. We do all like condensers and stuff. We do all sorts of pressure items.
Pressure.
Lots of ASME, lots of ASME process piping and pressure piping, and yeah. So I've kind of moved
You
into
guys roll out your old tanks and everything, or like you guys do it right from raw?
everything's from raw. We're an EPC company, so engineering, procurement, and construction. We're a turnkey solution for, not just around this area, but they actually have a site in Florida. So they send tanks all over North America. They've sent tanks up to Baffin Island. They've sent them down to Texas, Louisiana. They've sent them all over.
That's
So
fun.
yeah, it is fun. And I'm 8 weeks into this role now, and I'm really starting to like it.
Oh,
I liked it
you're
at the start.
fresh. Fresh.
I am fresh. I am very fresh. It was different, going from being on tools to now, sitting at a computer more than half of my day, inputting things, doing weld mapping, making turnover packages. But I still get to get on the floor and, move pipe around, do inspection stuff, and I really enjoy it.
Well, in my experience, and I think most people that listen to the podcast agree, the best inspectors are former welders.
Mm,
And not to diss people that get into inspection from a purely academic role, kudos if you can do it,
mhm.
but the communication with the welders is so much easier if you've welded,
It
right?
is. And
Because you're not just saying, "Oh, this is wrong." You can
mhm.
actually help with how to correct it.
That's right. And I think that's what's actually allowed me to gain the respect of so many welders. Because first of all, they're union, and I've never been in a union shop before. So that coming into it was a little off-putting. I'm like, ooh,
Hmm.
like I don't know what they're gonna think of me. But I was very upfront, I'm not a guy who just read books his whole life. I've been on the tools, I understand what you're doing. And already 8 weeks in, they come to me and they have issues, looking for advice. And I'm very upfront. I don't know everything, but I will find the answer for you, whether we have to look it up online or look in a book. But the stuff I do know, I'm very open with them about it and try to teach them. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a heck of a ride so far, that's for sure.
And how far is this job from your home now?
This is an hour flat. So this is definitely the farthest commute I've had to and from work. But you know
That's
what?
really
That hour,
lucky. That's really
yeah,
lucky for a guy in a small town to find so much work within an
yeah,
hour.
it's crazy. Yeah. So, and you know what? That hour drive goes by pretty quick, whether you're listening to some music or you throw on this podcast, or I listen to some hockey podcasts too. The time goes by pretty quick. I enjoy it in the morning, get to sip my coffee. sometimes on the way home, I'm like, oh boy, like I wish I was just home by now. But we also have the benefit that we work 410s. And my whole career, I've always worked Fridays.
Yeah.
Now I get quite a few Fridays off, which just makes it even better. So,
Man, I was just talking about that last weekend with a buddy of mine. 410s is pretty good. Like I like 410s, but if
yeah,
you ever get on a 312 shift with the premium,
yeah,
that's amazing.
that would be
Nope.
great.
I love that you just go and do 12s, you get your big
Yeah,
premium, you get
yeah,
36 hours plus you have, the extra 4 to top you up, and then you get
yeah,
4 days off. Chef's
yeah,
kiss. Best
yeah,
shift ever.
absolutely. That would be a nice shift.
Yeah, but not too many places offer that anymore.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So what's next on your list? Like you've been moving up quick, but according to my mathematics here, you're probably only like what, 28? Are you even 30 yet?
I turned 30 this year.
Okay, so my math was pretty
Yep,
good there.
yep,
So
yep,
you got a lot under your belt.
yep.
What do you plan next?
So this fall, I'm going to be taking my API 653 to
Okay.
become a storage tank inspector. And then I'm hoping in the next spring, if I do enough studying, I'll be able to take my go down to NBIC and take my authorized commissioner inspector for pressure vessels and kind of, steer that on the side of the shop. They're looking at getting me into, quality management for the shop too, just for the tank shop itself. So that's kind of, steering me to take this kind of course too. And they're willing to pay for it and they want to send me. And so far, my boss likes me. So that's pretty big.
It's good.
Oh,
You should look
yeah.
into the CWB products for that stuff too, because we,
Yeah.
we do a lot of quality management training, and with
Yep.
us moving into the US so aggressively,
Mm.
most of the stuff that we do is it it jives with all the other associations, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I definitely will. I'd like to take my, well, at least write the code endorsements for B31.1 and B31.3 for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Now, what about welding? What's going to happen with your welding skills? Or are they going to sail off into the sunset, or what do you
Yeah.
miss looking at the blue light?
No, I would like to start doing some stuff on the side for myself,
Yeah,
keep my skills up for sure. I don't like losing skills. So I think that'll be the best route. Like, for example, where I was at Fedorki's, we purchased all of our own tools. So I've got thousands and thousands of dollars in tools. So there's no sense in me not trying this since I've already got the tools. I just need to get a little bit better of a welder. I've currently only got a little 140 MIG welder, run a little gasless flux core on it, but
yeah,
I would like to get something and yeah, start doing my own thing, especially if I have 3-day weekends now.
yeah.
And the company I'm at, they don't care one bit if you do your own thing. So it's kind of a good
Well,
option.
you can get really good discount welders from the CWB membership. So
That's right.
shameless plug there. But
Yeah. Uh,
now, would you want to get your level 2 inspector as well? Like, is that anywhere on the horizon?
yep. So my 2 years will be up in January 2027, and I am definitely the moment I can go take it, I will be going to take it. That's
Because
for
that's a
sure.
big jump. That's a big jump. Like level
It
1,
is.
it's a 2-week course. It's pretty good. Lots of people challenge it.
Yeah,
As long as you have your weld symbols and you know how to read the code book quickly or search
that's
through
right.
it, the PDF quickly, you're okay. But level 2, you got it starts to get tough, and not a lot of people
It
go for
is.
level 3. So
Yeah. So I'm currently working under a level 3, and he tells me about how hard the course was all the time. So
yeah,
I'm definitely very appreciative. I'm learning from a guy who has so much experience. Like my boss is just, he's got so much code information in his head and he's so smart with welding stuff. So I'm very appreciative and it makes me want to go further, like taking my level 2 and taking my API 653 and
that's awesome.
doing all these extra things. It really pushes me to want to do that.
Now, the side of you that wanted to be a police officer, way back in the beginning, is there still any of that in you today? Is there, like, it looks like that's a volunteer firefighter's shirt, but I'm not
It
sure.
is. It
Yeah.
is. Yes.
So, like, I mean,
Yeah.
how do you still, I guess, fill that need in you to serve the public,
Yeah.
along with this career that you have in welding?
So I quickly found out it wasn't chasing the bad guys I wanted to do. I wanted to sit in a big vehicle and have lights and sirens going. Like 7 years ago, I joined the Athens Fire Department, in my hometown, and I've been going strong with that. And it kind of, actually goes hand in hand with what I was doing with welding because I've fallen in love with the education side of things.
Hmm.
So I'm currently on a course right now. I've taken 8 different courses in the past. I'm an instructor for them. So for me, giving back to the community, especially being in such a small community, has been so important. Like I'm not just even a volunteer firefighter. I'm on multiple different things that go on in Athens. I run a fishing derby. I'm on the Athens Corn Fest committee. So for me, it's always been big to give back. And my grandfather, like I said, he's passed away, but he spent 42 years on the same fire department. So I immediately, when I was young, like I got to be on the Athens Fire Department someday if I'm living in Athens. And luckily, I
So
was able to accomplish.
what year do you think we'll have to make the Cody for Mayor shirts for Athens?
I thought about the last round of going for council, but unfortunately, they kept it so quiet on their page about the application that I didn't know about it in time. But I definitely thought about doing council too.
I have too. That's why I joked because I see a lot of myself in you, and I remember being
Yeah,
young and being like, by 35, I'm going to get into politics because I want to make a
yeah,
change, you know. And
yeah,
I was so
exactly.
busy with my career and kids and stuff that
Yeah,
35 just kind of sailed by and I forgot about it. And then I was like, okay, 45, I'm going to get into politics. That was a couple years ago now. So it's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I feel like working at CWB for the not-for-profit kind of fills that void for me because I'm able to give back to communities and work with communities and kids and
That's right.
schools, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it kind of fills that need for me. And that's one of the things that I think is so great about the welding careers and why I picked up on your firefighter shirt right away.
Mhm.
Because welders, the steel industry in general, we are in a very privileged positions. We have great jobs that are fun and exciting. They keep us motivated. They also pay us well. So
Mhm.
we we generally, the best of us, have a pretty good sense of community, of
Right.
wanting to kind of give back and knowing that we're in a good position and you kind of want everyone to be in a good position. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And luckily, firefighting and welding actually go so hand in hand. If I'm trying to get into a steel structure of some sort, I got some good tips on how to break that steel apart. So it's been really transit between the two. Operating tools and heavy equipment and everything. It's been really really nice to be able to kind of transition some skills from my day job to my nighttime hobby.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, your family,
Mhm.
your mom and dad, the family in Athens, how are they supportive of your career and how everything turned out?
They are the most supportive family ever. They're so proud of me. My mom, my dad, my grandma always tell me how proud of me they are. My mom's always posted about me on Facebook and what I'm doing, and she's one of those people, and I'm so appreciative of it. And
Yeah.
it's definitely made the whole ride a little easier knowing I've got so much support behind me. Same with my fiance, and I've got 2 young girls now. Like they're both very supportive of me. So
Well, you're on the parenting rip now, yeah? There's no turning back
I'm
now.
on. That's right. I got well, my oldest daughter just turned 2 this past week, and then I have one that's 8 weeks old now. So
Oh boy.
yeah, it's a busy household. 2 big dogs, and
There's no sleeping going on around there.
very rarely. Last night we thought for sure we were gonna have another sleepless night, but she ended up getting to sleep.
Good, good, good.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in terms of your career, everything's kind of been going pretty good. I'd say you're doing pretty good.
Mhm.
And you got a pretty good head on your shoulders for where your vision is. In your community, what's missing in your community for the steel industry? What do you think that perhaps the CWB, the association or chapters or members, what would you like to see us do more for communities like Athens?
Well, in terms of for Athens per se, it's such a small community. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what they could bring in, but just in terms of like for the whole steel industry in this area, let's say like, Leeds Grenville, where I am,
Hmm.
it would be cool if we could get more courses down here, more
Yeah.
like, because I know right now you could travel to Milton and they're starting to branch out and do courses at colleges and stuff, but just making it optional for more people to take. Like I know they have online stuff now,
Yeah.
but I don't know if you'd get the same out of an online class as you would if, Derek or Sean are sitting there telling you what they know, because these guys are so invaluable.
Hmm.
So it would be cool if you get more outreach, I guess, per se,
Well,
in running courses.
that's good feedback because it is something that we talk about. It's like the industry says we need all these welders. The industry says we need all these inspectors. We need all these supervisors. And it's like, okay, well, we run programs, but we have two headquarters, one in Nisku, one here in Milton. And it's like, how do we do more? We have partnerships with Mohawk, with Fanshawe, with Conestoga. We have all these partnerships, but they kind of run around the school year. So that's one of the things that we also are trying to figure out is like, how do we get out to these communities? And how do I know I got at least 12 people to show up and do this? Because that's kind of the fear. It's like, well, no one's going to show up. And I don't
Yeah.
agree with that. I feel like
Yeah.
if I said, hey, we're going to have a thing in this part of the country and you promote it properly, I think it fills because I think there's enough interest.
Yeah. Promotion's huge for sure. And I don't know if that could stem from just even the CSRs starting to, let people know, hey, like these options are out there and, you could do education and you could learn more about what you're doing and promote your career faster or further on. It's definitely something I've thought about too, for sure.
Well, we might have to bring you into the CWB fold someday there, Nick.
That's right. I've thought about it. I've thought
You
about
gotta
it.
keep checking those listings on our website.
That's right. Yep. Absolutely.
Well, awesome, buddy. This has been a great interview. What's a piece of advice you'd like to give someone that's, young and thinking about getting in the trades about what to do?
My piece of advice, and it might sound kind of cliche, and I'll expand on it more, never give up. And what I mean by that is just because right now you're looking at something that might seem daunting or it might seem confusing to you, there's a good chance one day you're going to figure it out and you could really strive in it. When I was getting into this trade, I didn't expect to get to where I am now. 10 years in, I'm a welding inspector, welding supervisor, working in a large shop, giving advice to, guys 50, 60 years old have been doing this forever, and they respect my advice. So I would say, put your head down, run full steam, and never let go of your education, and never be afraid to do some continuing education, and see where it lands you.
That's great advice. And I believe it 100%. I've been a part of that train. There was a string there where I did night classes for almost 10 years in a row. Just even though I was welding all day, come home, feed the kids, do my chores, and then after the kids go to bed around 8, 9 o'clock, I'd be studying till midnight. And everyone thought I was crazy, but I just stuck at it, kept learning new things, kept learning another certification, another endorsement, another piece of paper, and you just keep stacking them. And every job, it's not just about what you learn, but it's the people you meet when you learn them too, right? Because
Absolutely.
every time you take a class, you run into other people that are just like you. Then you take another class and you run into people just like you, and you start building this network of amazing people across the country. Like even you,
Yep.
talking about Derek Scobie and Sean, just, you have those names in your head, you know who they are, and they're great, intelligent people, right?
That's right.
That network is invaluable, right?
Absolutely. And like you said before, in the welding trade, we're so lucky because I feel like we're like a diamond in the rough in the terms of like in the construction industry where we're so unique and we're so different and we can all relate to each other in a way of some sort. So yeah, when you meet someone really cool and interesting, they make an imprint on you. And that's why I'll never forget those guys who actually live in Alberta, multiple provinces away. And I'll never forget them and what they've done for me. So
Yeah, well, I'll be seeing them in a couple weeks here when I'm up in Red Deer for Weld Industry Days. So I'm sure
nice.
we'll all go for a beer. I'll bring you up.
Yeah. Uh,
Awesome, Nick. Well, thanks so much, and I really appreciate you taking the time today to be on the show.
yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
All right, and for anybody interested in getting into the trades, hey, no time like the present. We need people across this country. We got a new government in power, new leader. There's lots of new funding that's already opening up under a new government. That's the best time to get into the trades. Anytime there's a shift in politics, the new people always want to flood the market with money. Take it. Right? There's lots of funding opportunities, lots of programs running, lots of welders are needed across Canada, and we need all levels. We need welders, fabricators, inspectors, supervisors of all levels. So please get into the trades now. And as far as the podcast, thanks so much for following and making us the success we are. Keep downloading, sharing, and commenting. And please send us in some fan mail on the Buzzsprout website. We got a fan mail option, and I have been making reels with the questions that have been coming in. They're going to start getting released soon. So send us the questions any way you can. I will answer them. All right. So thanks so much. And I'll catch you at the next episode.
We hope you enjoy the show.